The blood froze in her veins when she saw the name on the visitor list, Marcus Vanderbilt. The same letters that had destroyed his life 5 years ago. The same ones that had cost his sister her life. Sarah Chen held her breath, her fingers trembling as she scanned the numbers next to the name. They didn't match. They never matched when Marcus was involved. She had learned this the hard way, by losing everything, including the person she loved most. But this time would be different. This time she was no longer the naive 28-year-old forensic accountant who trusted the system. Now she was a 33-year-old woman who had learned to hide in plain sight, pretending to be just a smiling receptionist in a corporate skyscraper. They didn't know that behind that polite smile lay the mind that once dismantled the largest money laundering scheme on the East Coast. And they definitely didn't know that Marcus Vanderbilt had just made the biggest mistake of his life by stepping foot in that building. If you want to find out how this story ends, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which city you're listening from. Before we continue, you need to understand who Sarah Chen is and why this discovery changed everything. 5 years ago, she was one of New York's most respected forensic accountants. Brilliant, dedicated, and with a promising career ahead of her. But everything fell apart when she discovered that Marcus Vanderbilt, one of Wall Street's most powerful executives, was involved in a money laundering scheme. Sarah did the right thing. She gathered the evidence and turned it over to the authorities. But Marcus had connections she never imagined. The case was dropped, her career was destroyed, and her sister Emma, the only family she had, died in a car accident 2 weeks after Sarah filed the complaint. Coincidence? Sarah never believed it, but she had no way to prove it. She lost everything: career, family, identity. She spent 5 years hiding, working menial jobs, trying to disappear, until today, until she saw that name again. This time, she wouldn't back down. Sarah arrived at work as usual, 8:30 a.m. sharp, professional smile, coffee in hand. The reception area at Meridian Financial was a world of glass and marble, where executives in suits walked past her as if she were invisible. Perfect. Invisibility was exactly what she needed. "Good morning, Sarah," said Jennifer, the HR manager, hurrying past. "We have an important meeting. Today, some outside investors." Sarah nodded, but her stomach tightened. Outside visitors meant extra checks, guest lists, documents to review, and that's exactly what she did when Jennifer left the list on her desk. His eyes scanned the names routinely until they stopped on one that made his world stop: Marcus Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt Capital. The letters seemed to leap off the page, each one a stab in his chest. Her hands began to tremble. 5 years. 5 years since she'd seen that name. Since it had destroyed everything in her life. Since Emma. "No," she whispered to herself, closing her eyes and forcing her breathing to normalize. She couldn't have a panic attack here. Not now. But when he opened his eyes again, the name was still there, and next to it, something that triggered her forensic accountant instincts. The preliminary transaction numbers didn't add up. A small discrepancy, almost imperceptible, but Sarah had been trained to see what others didn't. Marcus was at Meridian Financial, and he was already leaving his mark. She looked around the busy reception area, executives passing by, phones ringing, corporate life going on as usual. No one knew the predator had just entered their territory. No one knew the only person capable of stopping him was sitting right there, disguised as a receptionist. Sarah took a deep breath and opened the system on her computer. If Marcus was here, there was a reason. And this time, she would find out what it was before he could destroy any more lives. The hunt had begun. Sarah couldn't concentrate for the rest of the morning. Every ring of the phone, every movement at the reception desk made her think of Emma. Her younger sister, just 24, with a bright future ahead of her. A medical student, dreaming of working with underprivileged children. "Sarah, are you okay?" Jake Morrison, the IT analyst, stopped by her desk. He was one of the few in the office who actually saw her as a person, not just furniture. "I am," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just a little tired." Jake studied her with those intelligent blue eyes. "You look like you've seen a ghost." If he knew, Sarah thought, it's just a long day ahead. As Jake walked away, Sarah allowed the memories to flood back. The last conversation with Emma 3 days before the accident. Her sister was worried, saying strange men had shown up at her apartment asking about Sarah. Emma was scared, but Sarah reassured her, saying it was just paranoia. 3 days. Later, Emma's car veered off the road at a curve she'd taken every day for 2 years. No brake marks, no explanation. Just a dead young doctor and a sister racked with guilt. Sarah was never able to prove the connection, but she knew. Marcus had sent a message: stop investigating or lose someone else. And it worked. Sarah disappeared, changed her name, took menial jobs, buried her identity. But now he was here. In your company. Know your territory. The elevator opened and Sarah felt the air leave. Her lungs. Marcus Vanderbilt strode out just as she remembered, tall, with perfectly groomed grey hair and a suit that cost more than Sarah's annual salary. Power emanated from him like expensive perfume. He walked past the reception desk without even looking at her. Why would he? She was just the receptionist, invisible, harmless, perfect, Sarah thought, watching him disappear down the hallway. He didn't recognize her. 5 years, different hair, different name, different life. To Marcus, Sarah Chen had died along with Emma, but Sarah was very much alive, and this time she had something she hadn't had before: time, patience, and the advantage of being underestimated. Marcus had made the fatal mistake of returning to his past. Now, Sarah would make him pay for all his sins. Sarah waited until the end of the workday to begin her actual investigation. Meridian Financial was nearly empty after 6 p.m. Just a few workaholics and the cleaning staff. Perfect for what she needed to do. She had spent 5 years studying Marcus's every move from afar. She knew how he operated, his patterns, his preferences. He preferred solid, mid-sized companies with good reputations, but weak internal controls. Companies like Meridian. Using her limited access to the system, Sarah began mapping transactions from the past 6 months. Small transfers, seemingly legitimate investments, nothing that raised any red flags, but she knew how to read between the lines. "Working late," Jake appeared. Behind her, making her jump. "Jesus, Jake, you scared me." Sarah quickly closed the screen she was analyzing. "Sorry." He smiled, but there was curiosity in his eyes. "I just came to get something I forgot. Do you always stay late?" Sarah hesitated. She needed an ally, someone with access to systems she didn't have. Jake was intelligent, observant, and there was something about him that inspired trust, an intuition she hadn't felt in a long time. "Jake," she said slowly, "can I trust you?" "Sure." He pulled up a chair. "What's going on?" Sarah took a deep breath. It was a risk, but one she had to take. "I need you to help me investigate some transactions, discreetly." "Investigate? Sarah, you're a receptionist. Why?" "Because not everything is what it seems." Sarah stared at him. "Do you trust me?" Jake studied her for a long moment. "There's something different about you. I've always known." "Okay, what do you need?" Sarah smiled for the first time in years. A genuine smile. "Access to Vanderbilt Capital's complete transaction logs, everything that's passed through here in the last 6 months. "Vanderbilt, the guy who was here today?" "Exactly." Jake started typing on his laptop. You know this could cost us our jobs, right? Jake, Sarah said softly, if I'm right, losing your job will be the least of our problems. 30 minutes later, they had a pile of data that confirmed Sarah's worst suspicions. Hidden patterns, fragmented values, a complex web of transferences that only someone with her experience could recognize. My God, Jake whispered, looking at the numbers. This is money laundering, Sarah added. Sophisticated, well-planned, almost impossible to detect. She turned to him. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. The next few days were a race against time. Sarah and Jake worked alternating shifts, her gathering information as a receptionist during the day, and his nights mining data from the systems. What they discovered was terrifying. Marcus wasn't alone. Meridian's CEO, CFO, even some key clients, all were part of a network that moved millions through shell companies, offshore accounts, and fictitious investments. Look at this, Jake showed the screen to Sarah during one of their late-night sessions. They're using our company as a central hub. Money comes in from questionable sources, passes through various accounts here, and comes out cleanly on the other side. Sarah analyzed the data, her forensic, accountant's mind working at high speed. 300 million, she murmured. In the last 2 years, $300 million have passed through here. How do you know all this? Jake asked, for the 10th time. You're not just a receptionist, are you? Sarah stared at him. She'd come too far to lie now. My real name is Sarah Chen. I was a forensic accountant. I specialized in financial crimes. Era. Marcus Vanderbilt destroyed my career, and he killed my sister. Jake was silent, and for a long moment, that's why you're doing this. Revenge. Justice, Sarah corrected. Revenge would just be killing him. Justice is exposing this entire network and making sure they pay for every penny they stole. The next morning, Sarah was nearly discovered. She was reviewing some documents when Marcus appeared at reception, this time accompanied by Meridian CEO, Richard Hawthorne. Is she new? Marcus asked, looking directly at Sarah. No, she's been here for 2 years, Hawthorne replied. Sarah is reliable. There was something about the way Hawthorne said trustworthy that made Sarah realize her cover was weaker than she'd thought. They suspected something, but they weren't sure exactly what. Interesting, Marcus murmured, his eyes still fixed on her. You look familiar. Sarah's heart stopped, but she kept her expression neutral. I think I have an ordinary face, she replied with a professional smile. Marcus laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Maybe. Or maybe it's just déjà vu. As they walked away, Sarah knew time was running out. Marcus might not have fully recognized her, but her presence was making him uncomfortable. Soon, he would make the connection. She needed to act fast. The network was almost completely mapped, the evidence nearly all collected. Only one thing was missing, the definitive proof that would connect Marcus directly to the scheme. And Sarah knew exactly where to find her. Sarah decided to push the issue. If Marcus was starting to get suspicious, she needed to make him act quickly. Desperate people make mistakes, and Sarah was counting on it. She started subtly, accidentally, leaving certain documents where Marcus could see them, asking innocent questions about specific transactions, creating small irregularities that only someone monitoring the system closely would notice. The reaction was immediate. Marcus began spending more time at Meridian, holding private meetings with Hawthorne, making tense phone calls out of earshot. Sarah knew she'd struck a nerve. You're playing with fire, Jake warned her in one of their secret meetings. If he finds out who you are... He's already suspicious, Sarah replied. I'd rather control when and how he finds out. It was then that Sarah found what she was looking for, an old physical folder hidden in the office's archives. Inside were original contracts from when Marcus first became involved with Meridian, documents he thought were safe, buried in years-old paperwork. But, most importantly, a photo from a company's social gathering 3 years ago. And in the background, chatting with Hawthorne, was Emma Chen. Sarah felt her world spin. Her sister had been here. She had met these people. It wasn't a coincidence. Emma had been investigating something on her own before she died. "My God," Sarah whispered, her hands shaking. Emma hadn't died because Sarah was investigating Marcus. Emma had died because herself was investigating something. That night, Sarah sat alone in her office, studying every detail of the photo, every document in the folder. Little by little, a new truth emerged. Emma had discovered something about Meridian Financial, something that connected the company to suspicious activity. She had tried to warn Sarah but never got the chance. Working late again? Sarah froze. Marcus's voice echoed through the empty lobby. She hadn't heard the elevator, hadn't seen the lights come on. He'd arrived silently, like a predator. "Mr. Vanderbilt," she said, quickly closing the folder, "just finishing up a few things." Marcus approached slowly, his footsteps echoing on the marble. "You know, Sarah, I can call you Sarah, right? I was thinking about our conversation earlier, about you looking familiar." "Oh?" Sarah kept her voice steady, but her heart was racing. "And then I remembered." Marcus stopped in front of his desk. "You remind me of someone I knew a few years ago, a very determined young accountant. She also didn't know when to stop, asking questions." Sarah stared at him. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No." Marcus smiled, but his eyes were cold as ice. "That's a shame, because I'd love to know what happened to her, and her sister." The silence was deafening. Sarah knew her cover had been completely blown. Marcus knew exactly who she was. "Good evening, Sarah," he said, turning to leave. "Be careful on the way home. The roads can be dangerous." Sarah didn't return home that night. She knew Marcus wasn't making empty threats. Instead, she holed up in a cheap hotel across town, planning her next moves. She called Jake from a payphone. "He knows who I am." "Shit. Sarah, you need to go to the police." "With what? All we have is illegally obtained evidence. He'll claim we forged the data, that it's personal revenge." Sarah took a deep breath. "No, I need something more solid." "So what are you going to do?" "Finish what Emma started." Sarah spent the night reviewing everything they'd uncovered. There was a pattern she'd missed, a connection that still wasn't clear. Marcus was just one player in a much larger network. Someone was behind it all, coordinating the operation. The next morning, Sarah returned to work as if nothing had happened. But now she knew her every move was being watched, her every conversation monitored. Marcus had placed people to watch her. "You're crazy," Jake whispered when she told him her plan. "You want to meet him? Alone? It's the only way to get him to confess. He's confident now, he thinks he's in control." Sarah showed him the small recorder she'd bought. "I need him to admit what he did to Emma." At 6 p.m., Sarah texted Marcus, "We need to talk. Rooftop, 7 p.m., alone." The answer came 5 minutes later. "I thought you'd never ask." Sarah climbed to the penthouse, her heart pounding. It was a huge risk, but she needed more than financial evidence. She needed the truth about Emma. Marcus was already there when she arrived, leaning on the railing, looking down at the illuminated city below. "Nice view," he said without turning around. "Your sister liked high places too." "You met her?" "Of course I did. Emma Chen, medical student, too curious for her own good." Marcus turned to face her. "Just like you." "What did she find out?" Marcus laughed. "Same as you. That Meridian Financial is just a small piece of a much larger puzzle. That we launder money for cartels, dictators, terrorists, anyone who pays well." Sarah felt nauseous. 300 million. Only in the last year. You have a good memory for numbers. Marcus started walking toward her. Just like your sister. That's why she needed to be removed. You killed her. I gave the order, just as I'll give it again. Marcus stopped a few feet away from her. The difference is, this time, it'll be personal. Sarah activated the recorder in her pocket. Why? Why do this to us? Because you two were obstacles, and I remove obstacles. That was it. The confession she needed. Sarah started backing toward the door, but Marcus was faster. Where do you think you're going? Marcus blocked Sarah's path to the door, but she had prepared for this. 5 years of anger, pain, and training had changed her. She was no longer the naive accountant he had destroyed. You recorded our conversation, he said, not as a question, but as a statement. Clever, but not clever enough. Enough to destroy you, Sarah replied, her voice firmer than she felt. You think so? Marcus laughed. Sarah, you don't understand the magnitude of what you're facing. I'm not just a common criminal. I'm part of a network that includes judges, prosecutors, politicians. Even if this recording reaches the authorities, it will never be used against me. Then why do you care? Because I don't like loose ends. Marcus leaned closer. And you, dear Sarah, are a very loose end. It was then that Sarah realized she wasn't alone. Jake appeared at the penthouse door, accompanied by 2 federal agents. FBI, one of them yelled. Nobody move. Marcus turned around, surprised, but quickly regained his composure. Gentlemen, is there a problem? We were just having a business conversation. Recorded, Sarah said, pulling the device from her pocket. All of it. Agent Morrison, one of the feds said to Jake. Good job. Sarah looked at Jake, confused. Agent Morrison. Jake approached, removing a small badge from his jacket. FBI, Sarah. I've been investigating this network for 2 years. You've accelerated our investigation by weeks. You used me. I protected you. Do you think you could have survived this long if you weren't monitored by federal agents 24/7? Jake turned to Marcus. Marcus Vanderbilt, you're under arrest for money laundering, conspiracy, and murder. Murder? Marcus laughed. Good luck proving that. We don't need to, Sarah said, pulling another object from her pocket. Because Emma recorded everything too. Marcus's face changed. Impossible. She died 5 years ago. She died, but not before leaving behind hidden evidence. Sarah produced a small flash drive. I found it in her apartment, in a safe deposit box she rented before she died. Recordings, documents, everything she learned about you and your network. She was smarter than you thought, Jake added. She knew she was in danger, so she documented everything, including the recording of the meeting where you admitted you were going to kill her. Marcus tried to run, but the officers were already prepared. He was handcuffed while yelling about lawyers and political connections. This doesn't end here, he yelled at Sarah. You have no idea what you've unleashed. Then let's figure it out together, Sarah replied, because this time you won't hide behind powerful friends. In the following months, Marcus's arrest sparked an investigation that shook the entire financial system. The money laundering network was even larger than Sarah had imagined. Dozens of companies, hundreds of millions of dollars, and connections that reached the highest levels of government. Sarah became the case's star witness, working directly with the FBI to dismantle every aspect of the operation. Her expertise in financial crimes, combined with the intimate knowledge she had gained about Marcus, made her invaluable to the investigation. You saved countless lives, Jake told her one morning as they reviewed evidence in the makeshift office the FBI had set up. That money was funding human trafficking, operations, drug cartels, even terrorist groups. I didn't do it to be a hero, Sarah replied. I did it for Emma And for you too. You deserve to have your life back. Sarah smiled sadly. I don't know if I can get my life back, but I can build a new one. The trial was a media spectacle. Sarah testified for 3 days, recounting in detail how she uncovered the scheme, how Marcus had ruined her life, and how Emma had died trying to expose the truth. Marcus tried to discredit her testimony, claiming she had fabricated evidence for revenge. But Emma's recordings were irrefutable. Marcus's voice admitting he had ordered her death echoed through the courtroom, sealing his fate. You destroyed 2 brilliant lives, the judge said during sentencing. Sarah and Emma Chen were women of integrity who tried to do the right thing. Therefore, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But victory came at a price. During the investigation, Sarah discovered that Emma hadn't died immediately in the crash. She had survived for a few hours, long enough to give the coordinates of the safe deposit box to a friend. Her last words were, "Tell Sarah I love her, and that she must finish what we started." Sarah cried for hours when she learned this. She cried for the sister she had lost, for the life that had been destroyed, for the years they had spent in pain and isolation, but she also cried with relief. Finally, there was justice. What are you going to do now? Jake asked after the trial. Sarah looked back at the Meridian Financial Building where it all began. I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do. I'm going to use my experience to help others who have been through what I've been through. Going back to being a forensic accountant? Better, Sarah smiled, and this time it was a smile full of hope. I'm going to start a consulting firm, specializing in exposing financial crimes and helping victims get their lives back on track. And the name? Sarah looked up at the sky, where the stars were beginning to appear. Chen and Associates, in honor of my silent partner. 2 years after the trial, Sarah sat in her own office, a penthouse overlooking Manhattan. The sign on the door read, Chen and Associates Financial Investigations, and her reputation as a financial crimes expert had spread nationwide. Jake had left the FBI to work with her, bringing his technology expertise. Together, they had helped dozens of victims recover millions of stolen dollars and exposed several other criminal networks. We have a new case, Jake said, walking into his office with a folder. A woman in Chicago. She thinks her ex-husband is hiding money in offshore accounts. Sarah smiled. Complicated divorce? No. She thinks he's involved in drug trafficking. The money isn't his. Interesting. Sarah picked up the folder. Let's see what we can do. She had found her purpose. Every case she solved, every criminal she helped expose, was a small victory in Emma's name. Her sister had died trying to do the right thing, and Sarah was determined to continue that legacy. Her phone rang. It was a New York Times reporter wanting to report on the 2nd anniversary of Marcus Vanderbilt's arrest. Mrs. Chen, how do you feel knowing that Marcus will spend the rest of his life in prison? Sarah thought for a moment. I don't take pleasure in his imprisonment. I feel relief knowing he can no longer harm others, and I feel pride in having honored my sister's memory. Have you ever visited him in prison? No, and I don't intend to. My journey isn't about him. It's about the lives I can help rebuild. After hanging up, Sarah went to her office window. Below, the city teemed with millions of people, each with their own story, their own secrets, their own struggles. On her desk was a photo of Emma smiling, taken just a few months before she died. Next to it was a letter Sarah wrote to her every year on the anniversary of her death. Dear Emma, this year's letter read, 2 years later, I finally understand what you tried to teach me. Justice isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about protecting the innocent. It's about using our pain to prevent others from suffering. Sarah finished the letter and tucked it away with the others in a special drawer in her desk. Each letter was a renewed promise to keep fighting, to never give up seeking justice for those who had no voice. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Chen, I have a call for you, a young accountant from Seattle. She thinks she's learned something about your company." Sarah smiled. Another brave soul in need of help, another opportunity to make a difference. "Give it to me," she said, picking up the phone. "Hello? My name is Sarah Chen. I heard you needed help." On the other end of the line, a nervous voice began to tell a familiar story. Numbers that didn't add up, suspicious transactions, bosses making veiled threats. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering herself 5 years ago. "Breathe," she said gently. "You did the right thing by calling. Now tell me everything from the beginning. And don't worry, this time you're not alone." As she listened to the young accountant, Sarah looked again at Emma's photo. Her sister had died trying to expose the truth, but her death had not been in vain. She had planted seeds that blossomed into something greater, a company dedicated to protecting people like her. "Emma," Sarah whispered to the photo, "we did it. We finally did it." Outside, the sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the sky gold. It was a new day ending, but also a new case beginning. And Sarah Chen, no longer the invisible receptionist, but the woman who had faced her demons and won, was ready for the next battle, because some fights are worth fighting and some people are worth protecting. Emma had taught her that. Now it was her turn to teach others. Justice had been served, but the work was just beginning, and so ends the story of Sarah Chen, the woman they thought was just a receptionist, but who proved to be so much more. A story of courage, determination, and justice that teaches us that we should never underestimate the power of a person determined to do the right thing. Marcus Vanderbilt may have temporarily destroyed her life, but Sarah proved that truth always finds a way. That justice, even delayed, eventually arrives. And that sometimes the most unlikely people are capable of the most extraordinary acts. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, justice, and redemption, please leave a like so more people can learn about Sarah Chen's inspiring journey. Subscribe to the channel for more moving stories like this, and tell me in the comments, what was the part that moved you the most? What would you do in Sarah's shoes? Thanks for watching until the end. See you in the next story.